You got it?
Okay.
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 Can we do like a rehearse it real quick?
Yes, you can rehearse it real quick. Yes.
Okay. This is Sonia Frontera from soniafrontera.com, and you are listening to Jeff Smith on Vroom, Vroom, Veer.
Whoop, whoop. That was, we don't need to do a take two. That was really good. But if you want, to do it again and sound,
that's fine.
You can make a fake voice.
Use it.
Yeah, no, it's perfect.
Ooh, you are.
Please. This is Sonia.
I might even get a job offering out of this.
Yeah,
Can you imagine?
You never know. Okay.
Sex line.
I'm going to hit stop on this recorder right here. I'll be right back. I won't hear you for a sec. Okay.
Are you ready to thoughtfully steer away from your revved up, frenzied, and far too often scripted life? Then welcome to Vroom Vroom Veer with Jeff Smith, where he guides you down the road differently traveled by sharing unique experiences with guests who have managed to shift away from a life stuck on cruise control and veered their way into a more authentic and fulfilling one in all sorts of interesting and kind of remarkable ways. Get ready to Vroom Vroom Veer with your differently traveled road chauffeur, Jeff Smith.
Christine Whitmore. Did I say that right? No, it's Christine Whitmarsh. Yay!
Yay.
AKA Christine Inc. I'll edit out the more part.
Say Christine Inc. Whitmarsh.
There you go. Christine Whitmarsh. I usually look at my notes, but I was being lazy. Okay. So you are well, thank you. Let me say my my actual thing that I always say. Thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show. How's it going?
Oh my goodness. Oh, it's always going well. This show is already a laugh riot. So I can't wait to see where we go from here.
Yeah. And we haven't even started recording yet. So that's awesome. Okay. Yeah. So you are at Christine-Inc. That's the ink that you write with.com. So tell us a little bit briefly about what you're most excited about over there at the Ink Agency.
Oh, I'm excited about everything. I have the most amazing authors. I am a book coach and ghostwriter.
Right.
And my great number one passion in the world is turning people who never had an inkling, pun intended, that they could become an author. Yeah. And they could barely even see themselves as writers. And they come to me because they think they want to hire me as a ghostwriter. But I'm so passionate about my book coaching services and skills that I've attained over 20 years that I'm just like, I can turn you into an author in 6 months. And I do. And it's so exciting. It usually hits them about halfway through the process. About 3 months in, they look at all the words in the manuscript and they say, oh my God, I'm an author. It's magic. So that's my greatest
passion. It happened again.
Yeah. And my niche focus, I work with, business authors, fiction authors and everything, but my niche focus and number one passion is memoir, because essentially I believe that every book is a memoir, believe it or not.
Okay.
Confuses some people because genre-wise on Amazon, not every book is a memoir, but I believe that every book, by virtue of the fact that an author is bringing their life, their unique perspectives, their voice into it, is a memoir, because that's what a memoir is. You're sharing your life stories to inspire and help others. So I believe every book is a memoir, but I specifically coach people on memoirs.
I get it. Yeah. As a lifelong reader, as you're reading a novel, right? And you'll know this, right? Do you like sci-fi?
Oh God, yes.
See, so when every sci-fi book, novel, even if it's a long ass series, right? There's this moment where the author, all of a sudden, everybody's off the stage and they pontificate. This is why I wrote this book, to tell you these words, right? Yes. That happens in nearly every good sci-fi book I've ever read, right? So you're right. Yep. Totally.
And you find, that's how books are born. That's how books are formed. Right. It starts with that little kernel of and usually for an author, it starts with like a weird what if question, like what if da 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 da. So what you're describing is the moment when you come across the original statement that, really they created a book around that statement. And that's really cool when you can identify that.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, it's like, oh, okay. Now get off your soapbox and get back to the adventure. Exactly. Yeah, now I know why you wrote this book.
They really just wrote the sentence, and then they came, what if da 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 da, and then the next moment is,
how am I going to get there? Yeah.
Now I have to write a whole story around it.
Exactly. That's the work. The idea is the easy thing.
Oh, everybody has go to Hollywood. Everybody has 100 screenplay ideas a minute in Starbucks out there.
Roger that. Okay. So before we get into your Vroom Vroom Veer life story, which we always do because this is Vroom Vroom Veer, and it's fun because you wrote a book. What was the name of the book again? Say
Power of the Curve.
The Power of the Curve, right? And she's showing it to me. If you're on audio, right? And then when you read that, the description of Vroom Vroom Veer, you're like, that's the same thing as me in my
Power
book.
of the Curve.
That's right.
He's using super cool alliteration to say the power of the curve.
Right. Yes. I can't take credit for the alliteration. I hired branding people. They're much smarter than me. Yes.
Well, they're very good. And V
they
is
are
really
very good.
V is an underused letter. So good job. Good job on them.
Yes. I was actually kind of anti Vroom Vroom Veer until they had to talk me into it. But now that I have it, I love it. So, but before we get into your Vroom Vroom Veer story, I'm going to take a sip of water.
Yep.
And then I'm going to tease some stories from the Hollywood years, I guess.
Apparently, those are my funniest life chapters.
Yeah, the Hollywood trilogy is, so we're going to get like 3 stories from Christine Inc. One is the Flaming Gypsies. So we have to pay off these now. Don't let me forget. The Flaming Gypsies, Poker Face Sledgehammer. I love these. And The Dude.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Lebowski.
Yeah, yes, The Dude. So that is the inspiration of The Dude from The Big Lebowski. Okay. All right. So now we have thoroughly teased the audience and they're like mad that we're not talking about those things now. Okay. So let's go back in time and talk about your childhood. Yes. Now that all those things, the clocks are going wild and all right. And so what was it like growing up? Let's start with, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Auburn, Massachusetts, which is right outside of Worcester. I don't know how familiar you are. There's 3 major cities in Massachusetts. Out west, there's Springfield. In the middle, there's Worcester. Out east, there's Boston. So Worcester's the middle one.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. You don't sound like that area. You don't have any sort of accent at all.
My husband differs. Well, it begs to differ sometimes. It comes out. I would say, like, put me at Fenway with a hot dog and a beer. It'll come out.
Understood. Yes, I'm from Upper Peninsula, Michigan. Yeah. So we all sound either Canadian or from Minnesota. That's the sound.
I say about, and everybody thinks I'm Canadian. It's very strange. I don't know.
Yeah. No, it sounds like my touch phrase for my accent is. I ain't going to pay no $2 for a corn muffin that's half dough. But that's actually Minnesotan.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm familiar with that. Yeah.
So what was it like growing up in, what did you say it was? Worcester?
Auburn, Massachusetts.
Auburn. Yeah. What was childhood like?
15,000 people. So when I
okay.
Which means when I went off to college later on at University of Rhode Island, that was a population upgrade to the town that I grew up in. We didn't even have a movie theater in Auburn. You had to go to Worcester to do anything.
Wow.
And yeah,
okay.
super small town.
Right.
And so I, hid in the basement and read books and wrote stories while all the other kids, I was like this weird albino child that was in the basement writing stories and reading and all this while everybody else had a normal childhood.
What was that basement like? Was it scary?
Oh no, it was really cool. It was finished and we had a wood stove down there. It was like a study. It was like, if you picture the kind of like typical, like in a novel, the old study with the roaring fire and, very
like
comfortable.
Wood paneling and things yes. Okay.
Cozy. Yes.
Yeah. Nice. When I was at my first house where I grew up, I don't know why, but I remember the walls were made of stone. Like, because that's what was there when they dug the hole to make the house. So it was scary.
I don't know why I'm like the Flintstones. Like
it was weird. I asked my mom about it and she was like, yeah, well, that was there and it was okay. So they just sort of built the basement in there and the rocks were there too. And they built around them. I was like, oh, okay.
I mean, you're saying stone and I'm still picturing the Flintstones, but sure.
Anyway, but I remember like loving hanging out in that first basement, but I didn't want to be down there alone or ever at night because it seemed scary.
I loved our basement. I was just
that was your hangout.
Reading it. I mean, I think I went outside and played with the other children once in a while, but I mean, see, I'm the child that like, I've been writing since I was 7 years old because I come from like my whole dad's side of the family are all writers. They're sports writers.
Right.
They covered the Red Sox and the Patriots. They're all like big Boston sports writer guys. My father,
That's
my grandfather,
amazing.
everything like that.
Yeah.
And it's funny, my mom's side of the family is all entrepreneurs and business people. So I have a writing business. And
kind of makes sense.
So I would write short stories and give them as gifts to family members. So everybody, gives grandma, robe and slippers. And I would give grandma like weird short stories about like children in a haunted house. Here, happy birthday, grandma. It's a scary story to give you nightmares, grandma.
Oh, that's awesome. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what were you like in, say, high school?
I was
still the nerd.
Adult. I was a little adult. I was like the adult who ran the school. I was way ahead of my time, really probably annoyed everybody I was around, but I was the one that they put in charge of everything. And here's a great example of like my rapport with the teachers is, because I was in charge of like if they wanted something done, like the yearbook, the newspaper, the school play, they wanted something done. It's like, well, have Christine do it. At least we know it'll get done. And so, which meant that I was the kid that I didn't have to go to gym class or study halls, or I didn't have to do anything that I considered non-productive.
Oh, wow.
I was running the school. So I was very busy being the, CEO student of the school. So I was walking down a hallway. I was walking down a hallway one day and the substitute teacher who didn't know who I was. I mean, this is like the most egotistical story. I was like, do you know who I am? The substitute teacher, this poor girl, she was just a teaching student at the local community college. She had no idea who I was. And she came out, young lady, where's your hall pass? And I didn't even know what a hall pass was because no one had ever asked me to have one. What? And we were just kind of having a discussion. One of the other teachers came out and said, what's the commotion out here? What's the problem? And the student teacher, she doesn't have a hall pass or whatever. Teacher says, oh, that's Christine. You don't need to worry about her. And then he waved me on the way. And the student teacher was like, what just happened here? What the hell just happened here? Honestly.
Yeah, I was thinking like she was gonna say something like, no, that's Christine. She kind of works here.
Yeah, I mean, it was Mr. Mongilio. He was the math teacher and the driver's ed, Mr. Mongilio. And he came out, he says, that's Christine. You don't worry about her.
Wow.
Big balding dude. Like, that's Christine.
That's Christine. You don't need to worry about her.
Like Don Corleone. Don Corleone comes out and waves me off.
Okay, so that's awesome. So thanks for that. So the curve in the book, the power of the curve, had something to do with your spine. So talk a little bit about that whole thing. Like, what was it like? What was your life like in relation to the spine thing? Before surgery, during surgery, after surgery? Let's get into that.
Well, my father had the spine thing, so we were always looking for it, but it was crazy because it just curved so fast. I think that happens in females, the way hormones and growth and adolescence works for females. Right. And it curved so fast. It went from like totally like super straight at age 14 to all of a sudden it was, I think like by the time they first diagnosed it when I was 16 years old, it was like 68 degrees or something like that, which is funny because that's what it is today, previewing the end of the story. But it curved so fast and my ribs were twisting around. Ooh. And it wasn't like having a brace or any kind of, it was just like the surgery is the only option or else you're just going to keep twisting around and then die. So basically you'll be in a wheelchair by the time you're 30. So
yikes.
It progressed really quickly, but I was, an obnoxious.
Does this thing have a name that you're?
Yeah, scoliosis. Yes.
Okay.
Very scoliosis. So, but I was an obnoxious child and said, I want to graduate with my high school class. So I didn't have the surgery at 16. I felt like I wanted to get more living out of the way in case something happened. So age 16 was a diagnosis. So I, finished high school and then, when I did my first year of college at the University of Rhode Island.
Right.
And had the surgery at age 19. Well, in those 3 years, the curve had gone from 68 degrees to 116 degrees of combined S curve. So
I don't do math, but that doesn't sound good.
100. Yeah. When you probably heard people say, oh, I have scoliosis or I was diagnosed with scoliosis. If you've ever heard people say these things, it's not like a normal conversation, but when you hear people say that, they have scoliosis, they know someone with scoliosis, they're generally talking about curves that are like under 30 degrees, maybe like 20 to 40 degrees. 116 is life-threatening. 116, the ribs were twisted around. One leg was 4 inches shorter than the other. One hip was it was life-threatening at that point. I couldn't even stand for more than 10 minutes without being in agonizing pain. 116 is one of the more severe cases they'd ever seen.
Yikes.
Yeah.
So in retrospect, maybe you waited too long. Is that, I don't know. No, I'm asking. I'm not guessing. I'm asking.
No, I was a very stubborn, obnoxious child. Well, because everybody kept, putting me in charge of everything and telling me I was good. That didn't help the childhood ego. But no, I'm glad I did what I did, because I went off to college and I did get some things underway. But, fact is, by the time it got to the point where it was 116 degrees, the surgeon gave me 3 odds going into the surgery. He said, even thirds, 1/3 of a chance you're going to be okay. 1/3 of a chance you're going to be a quadriplegic, which is paralyzed from the neck down. Wow. 1/3 of a chance you're going to die. You won't even survive the surgery.
Oh my goodness.
But 19, I think my attitude helped, because I said, I'll be fine. And tell me, mind over matter, that's a thing.
It's totally a thing.
2/3. But on the operating table, all of those things happened. So for the first thing that happened is they straightened my spine so much, because they really wanted to straighten it as much as they could, that they ended up paralyzing me. So then they had to shorten the rod and straighten it less and unparalyze me. Well, at that point, the surgery had gone on for so long. I'd been under anesthesia for so long, and I was like 110 pounds, that I went into, respiratory arrest, not breathing, and cardiac arrest, no heartbeat. So I died on the table. So all the things, interesting, because all the things that he predicted going in happened to me, but then we got to the third, which is, and I ended up okay. But it was,
So you got all 3. You got all 3 all in one surgery.
Yeah. It was a heck of a time.
You were
then
paralyzed,
I was in the ICU.
You died, and then you lived.
Yep. And
that's amazing.
Heck of a time.
You're kind of like me, like when people say, "Do you want cherry? Do you want chocolate, or do you want vanilla?" I always say yes.
Yeah. Exactly that, but like with tubes and anesthesia,
death, paralysis, and living. Yeah.
Icky things like learning how to walk again, little minor life issues.
So let's talk about like waking up, and how were you, like, in good spirits, bad spirits?
No, it was not good spirit. I was in a lot of pain. I don't remember waking. I was in the ICU, and I don't remember that. I was on a respirator. Horrible. It was pretty
horrible. Yes.
It was a rocky time. But I remember the first time I stood up, which is really interesting, because I gained 3 inches of height from when I laid down. And then the next time I stood up, and everything in the room was in a different place than it was when I laid down. Because imagine you lay down, and then the next time you stand up again, you're 3 inches taller.
That would wig you out.
That was very interesting. Yeah. And the center of gravity, having this giant titanium rod, it's still there, the length of my back.
Yikes.
And then the center of gravity completely changed. So I remember going to the swimming pool, and I just like, all of a sudden I just like sunk backwards. So I was like, oh, there's something bringing me down. So
how long did you have to rehab?
It was, this was pretty much, the surgery, I think, was in like May of 92. This was pretty much my 92. I had to take a semester off from college. 1992 was, restoring enough function to be functional to go back to college.
A whole year of rehab.
Well,
physical therapy.
Surgery was in May, and it was, and I went back to school in January of 93. And University of Rhode Island, by the way, is built on a 90-degree slant. So I didn't have to just be functional. You have to be like super functional. And then in the winter, you walk up the hill with icy, and you walk up 4 steps and you fall back 2. So I had to be super functional in order to go back to that school that is built on.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. And you got all of your function back?
Yeah. Oh, better than it was before. Before I was all twisted up and in back pain, and now I was much better than I was before. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. That's quite a story. You learned a lot.
Oh my God. Well, and it's weird. The lessons didn't come until I wrote my memoir later on. And then which was like a few years ago. So it took a couple decades for me to really internalize. And this is what I do with my book coaching clients when I help them write their memoirs. You don't really, I think, internalize all the lessons you've learned while you're living them. You really have to reflect on them later. And this is why the memoir writing process is such a passion for me, because I'm working with my clients and they're internalizing lessons from like 20, 30 years ago. And they're like, I never saw that. It's like, well, you're having to write it in a book, which is not just writing it. It's
reliving it.
It's reliving it. And it's also dissecting it and developing it into a flow. Like, the whole process of writing a book is so much more than writing. So they go through that whole process. And they're just like, I never even saw that until now. Yeah. Dissecting is the best word.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. You get another opportunity to go in there and own your stuff, kind of thing, right?
And see it from a completely different camera angle that when you're in the moment, and then
when you're in it, you don't really, all you're doing is responding, reacting, kind of,
Yeah, like an actor is going to see a scene completely different than the director and the audience see it.
Yeah, totally. So when you go back and review it and you maybe like try to visualize it as you yourself in like a third person perspective sort of thing. Yeah. And then you look at yourself and go, oh yeah, I was stupid or whatever,
I mean, the first thing I realized is that nursing was not like this random, initial career decision for me, because the Vroom Veer just is that Vroom. Before the scoliosis, I was heading down this path of becoming a journalist, being a writer, be the next, my mom said, you should be the next Barbara Walters and everything like that.
Oh, wow.
And then all of a sudden the scoliosis happened and I basically became a chronic, like professional patient for 3 years in the medical system. I think I was wearing a bracelet for 3 years because of all the testing and just all the things that happened.
From like 16 to 19.
16 to 19 to lead up to that surgery. You don't just like walk in and say, I'll take that surgery. That's major.
I'll have that surgery now. I've been screwing around for the last 3 years. No.
So the first so the first, like this really big curve happened where I was going to be a writer. Everybody in town thought I was the writer. Everybody just knew I was going to be a writer. And it's like, I'm going to be a nurse. And the whole time, what? And my family and friends, and they didn't understand that. And I don't even think I understood that decision because I'm very good at rationalizing things and making it make sense and just saying, well, nursing makes sense because you're always going to have a job as a writer. How are you going to make a living as a writer? Well, I figured out a way. But how am I going to make it? And I just, justified and rationalized. Writing my memoir, I'm just like, I was a professional patient for 3 years, feeling completely out of control. And out of control, you can probably see is not a good look for me, being in control of the whole high school and being in control. Right. So being a patient, I really wasn't in control of my situation. So becoming veering off and becoming a nurse and having that change in career path, that was my way of regaining control back. That was one of the things I learned while writing my memoir. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you started maybe identifying with the nurses that you were interacting with all the time and sort of like,
it wasn't really identifying. It was totally a control issue with me. I think it was my way of taking control of my situation, taking control back, becoming a nurse.
And becoming a nurse made, at least thinking about becoming a nurse, gave you some measure of control. You were a nurse for a year.
For about a year and a half. And I was a student nurse and an EMT longer than I was a nurse. But a year in, I said, oh, I don't like this at all.
You sound like me.
I just was like, this was not a good career choice. Once the all the motivations kind of wore off that led me into it, and I realized I was a nurse, I was like, oh no, I don't like this.
Right.
But it's really funny. The thing I love the most about nursing, which carries over to my job today as a memoir book coach, I loved hearing patients and patients' family stories. And that should have been that was an early sign where it's like, all I wanted to do was just hang out in their room and listen to stories. And it's like, oh, you actually have to like take care of them too. You can't just sit there talking to them all day. Oh, but they're so cool and interesting, and I want to hear their life story. I had a hospice patient that went to junior high school with Albert Einstein. She referred to him as Al.
What?
So those were early roots of being a memoir person.
How could you not just camp out and talk to them?
I did.
Okay, good. Yeah.
That's why I wasn't a very good nurse, because I just wanted to hang out, camp out, and talk to them.
Yeah. Can I go get a bottle of booze?
You actually have to take care of patients.
Damn it.
Oh, and then I had a lady who was one of the nuns in The Sound of Music.
What?
Yeah.
Was she the Climb Every Mountain nun? That would be
No,
awesome.
She wasn't the main nun. She was one of the side nuns.
That was my favorite part of that movie, the Climb Every Mountain moment.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Very inspiring.
Yeah.
she was one of the other nuns, but
right. That's fine. Okay, so let's see. Where were we? I think we got over. Okay, so now you finish your surgery, you go back to college, and then you graduate. You become a nurse, at least a student nurse, right?
No. At that point, when you graduate and you take the boards, you become a nurse.
Okay.
I didn't really see I never really enjoyed being a student nurse, which should have really been a red flag that maybe being a nurse wasn't going to be awesome.
Okay.
But it took, sometimes I'm a little slow because I get wrapped up in, there's a line I say in my book, denial and determination are two sides of the same coin. So sometimes I get so determined that there's a state of denial about what I'm being determined about.
Totally. I think we all that's one of the many, I think I'm pretty good at letting go, but we all still get stuck. Yeah. We get stuck on, what do they call it?
Vrooming, a very busy.
Yes. Very busy vrooming.
Don't tell me about reasons to veer off because I'm in vroom mode.
Yes. Yeah. I have many examples myself.
Yeah, I'm sure. Hence your show.
Yes, yes. Okay, so how did you start writing and start the business of being, the memoir writer, the ghostwriter? How did that, give us the superhero origin story of Christine Inc.
Well, there's an 8-year gap in between quitting nursing and writing that involves Hollywood and acting and all that.
Oh, well, let's get into that.
Yeah.
We can't skip over the good stuff.
Oh yeah, after I left nursing, and then we'll do your 3 Qs whenever you want them. But
sure, of course.
When I left nursing, I said, "What do I do now?" And I had a roommate at the time, and she said, "Well, you could just do the stereotypical cliche and become an actress, a starving actress, waitress kind of person." So I was like, okay, I'll be the starving actress, waitress. So I just did like odd jobs and things like that. But at that point I was taking acting classes and I didn't really enjoy acting that much, but it really brought me back to the love of writing, which I'd really abandoned for nursing because of that whole, very rational conversation I had in my, 18-year-old mind that, well, we can't make a living writing. Writing is not a responsible career. It's funny, like most people get that stuff from adults. I had like some weird inner adult in my head that was telling me that writing is irresponsible when all the actual adults around me were just like, why aren't you being a writer? So I had this like weird authoritarian voice that was like me. It was very strange. But
I had one of those too when I was a kid. So I was like, I can tell a very sad story about like me and all the guys, right? Our big coming of age trip for high school in our senior year was to go drive all the way to, where the hell was it? Somewhere in Wisconsin, close to Chicago.
Okay.
Alpine Valley is the name of the concert venue. Mm-hmm. And it was the Boston concert, the band Boston, right?
Yeah.
So you probably know them.
A little familiar, yeah.
So we saw Boston in concert, right? Mm-hmm. And we got really, really drunk and it rained and there was mud. And then we brought like, I don't know how many girls back to the hotel room, right? in our high school stupor. That's and funny. And you know what I did? I went to the other room and went to bed.
Yeah,
because I was trying to be the responsible guy and I didn't want to be hungover driving the next day. That might have been you.
That's totally my choice. I mean, it's just funny, like the idea of like bringing all these girls back. It's like, did you think you were in the band? Did you have groupies? One
of the guys brought one of the girls into the other bed in the room that I was trying to sleep in and, did things while I was trying to sleep. That from lots of regret.
It's like the scene in Forrest Gump. Anyway,
I would say, if I could go talk to that younger self, I'd say, get up, go party.
My younger self was my older self, and now I'm a child. That's a whole thing right there. But ultimately, just to bring it back, like acting. And because I went to like a conservatory level of acting, because, I have to do everything at the highest level.
You actually went to acting school?
Acting, big time acting studio out in LA. And where we did a lot of improv and a lot of, creating our own scenes. And that, of course, brought me back to my original passion of writing. So then I went from acting to screenwriting, directing, and, so just kind of did like the Hollywood route. There were just a lot of screenplays, which was really fun because all the screenplay writing experience, and I had a really great mentor who was the director of the movie Waiting, and he helped produce Good Will Hunting and things like that. Oh, wow. So I just got some really good screenwriting education. And that ultimately, brought me over to ghostwriting, which is, like there's a whole like I got into ghostwriting by probably the most coincidental, random way anybody could start a career.
Those are the best Veers. Yes.
Yes, this is a great one. So I was, broke starving actress, which was really exciting for my mom since she paid for a Bachelor of Science and nursing degree for me to be a broke starving actress. She was so excited about that. So she was trying to give me being very helpful, but without being passive aggressive about it, and just going, so here are some ways you could make money. I'm in a little crappy LA apartment. And she's like, she says, well, you're really good at typing and you're in LA around all those big colleges. So why don't you place a typing ad where maybe students will pay you to type their term paper? And then I don't have to keep giving you money because maybe you can make some of that. So I put an ad in all UCLA, USC, all the local college papers to I will type your term paper for you. Right. I'm thinking, that's going to bring, I'm going to be a millionaire this way. So I realized that ad. And one of the ads was in the UCLA student newspaper. So, this kid, one of the students there, he brought it home to his mom and dad's house and just kind of like tossed the newspaper haphazardly on, mom and dad's kitchen table. This is a Hollywood guy, it turned out to be,
right,
with the classified thing up, with my ad facing up on the kitchen table. And dad walks by the kitchen and he sees my ad and he's just like, well, that's really interesting. He calls me and he says, well, he says, I don't have a term paper, but I have been trying to write a book for about 20 years now. And I have just a whole trunk and like a vault full of notes and everything like that. Could I hire you to just type those notes up for me?
Wow.
So, and he turned out to be a celebrity acting coach and kind of a big deal in his own right. So a typing job, all of a sudden he saw that, we got to talking and he saw that I had abilities that went beyond typing. So then it became editing, then it became ghostwriting. And that was how I ended up getting my very first book ghostwriting job, through a typing ad in the UCLA student newspaper.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Did you ever get any term paper writing jobs?
No, I just got that one, which is great because now I have a ghostwriting career now because of that ad. But
that's amazing.
So when it's really funny because other ghostwriters and students and, young people that want to kind of, do what I do and, be who I am and everything like that. Like, what's your advice for getting a career in ghostwriting? I'm just like, well, I have the most interesting way I got into this career ever. So I don't know if I'm the person to give you advice.
Don't ask me. I have no idea.
Just wait for random weirdness to happen in your life and go with it.
Yeah. Keep trying really hard and keep learning. Yes. The power of the curve. Right. Right.
Go with the curves. Don't worry so much about the destination.
Don't worry about the vrooming so much.
I mean, if we are talking about like advice I would give to young people, I know this is just, you didn't ask for it, but I'm just going to, that want to kind of, be writers or be anything creative or whatever. It's, develop your strengths, play to your strengths, and don't obsess about the destination. Just kind of see the curves that are in front of you and see how you can find power and strength in them and just ride them and don't resist them.
Yeah, that's good advice for sure. Yeah. Focusing on the strengths is way better than trying to make yourself a perfectly like all of these things are bad about me and I need to get better at skill building. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with skill building, but don't think you have to be really good at everything. Because you don't.
The important part is develop your strengths. So if you want to be a writer, write every day. Right. Shocking thought, I know. No, it doesn't mean, doing a read board and hoping for a call from Steven Spielberg and, obsessing and going out and, drinking at clubs and calling it networking. No. If you want to be a writer, you need to write. You need to read books about writing. You need to actually practice your craft every day.
Get a habit. Yeah.
Yeah. Not exactly. You'd think it would be like a daily writing habit.
Right. Daily. I've heard that before.
I think I've heard that.
I think I may have heard that before. Yeah.
Yeah. Develop the skill. I think sometimes, aspiring creatives, they sometimes forget about.
I've got a story that you might like about me and writing, right? Yeah. Okay. So, just as I was thinking about having you on my podcast, I was remembering that I kind of don't like writing anymore. Okay. Yeah, I know. So then I remembered why.
Yeah.
Because I had some of that perspective that you were talking about.
Uh-huh.
And I was trying to figure out, where is that? Why don't I really like writing anymore so much? Yep. Right? As a practice even. So the story is I was trying to like blog for the longest time and blogging is writing, So I was writing a lot, right? And thinking, okay, this is how I'm going to make money and have a life of freedom. And at the same time, it was the first time I was really alone and isolated because my wife was working and I wasn't. Mm-hmm. So then it turns out isolation and loneliness is really bad for your health.
Yeah.
And I got depressed. Yeah. And I was writing. So now
it's
those
bad for
guys
your health, but sometimes it's good for your writing. It's
totally no. I'm not. Yeah. So there's a difference between lonely, isolation, sad, depressed, and like positive solitude is something that you need. So
my life.
Positive solitude is amazing. Yeah. When you can go out and say, text a buddy and say, let's go get a coffee or let's do lunch. Right? Yep. As long as you still have the balance, you're fine. I didn't know any of that. And in my brain, like writing and isolation and loneliness and depression all got wrapped into the same ball. And that's why I think I kind of didn't want to write anymore. Right?
Yeah.
Because I equated it to being lonely and sad.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Hold those. Yeah.
Yes,
like neural circuits in your head.
exactly. They got tied up into a rubber band ball of sadness. Correct.
We train our brain of, how we want to associate things, but that's a whole other conversation.
So now I was like, oh, okay. So writing's not so bad. I can write some more. Right. So thanks.
Yeah. You have to write your way out of writing. I can writing advice all day.
For whatever reason, just listening to your 3 minutes of your podcast, I was like, yeah, all right. That's why probably I don't like writing anymore. Anyway, let's get into some of these stories before we run out of time.
Because we're in the Hollywood phase. So
we are in the Hollywood phase. Right. Okay. Yeah. So the Flaming Gypsies. Go.
Yeah. That's when I was producing an independent film, and we were filming one night at Dockweiler Beach in Los Angeles.
I know Dockweiler. Yep. I know.
Yeah. It's in El Segundo. For everybody else. It has a direct flight line to LAX, which is really fun because, whenever, and the planes come in, we were filming, like late at night. And just fun fact about Dockweiler, the planes come out from the ocean to LAX about 2 a.m. in the morning, and they fly like so low that it's just like everybody duck because you might get decapitated. So the FedEx, it's all the FedEx and the UPS planes, and they fly super low and they come in from the ocean. So I seriously, like most of the night was the sound guy going, hold for sound, holding for sound. As the FedEx plane tries to decapitate people.
Right.
But it was a really windy, freezing cold night. And of course, so windy is the key word here because one of the scenes that we were shooting was the big Flaming Gypsy scene where there's going to be, it's just so weird, a bonfire in the middle. And there was going to be an outer ring of flaming tiki torches. And the inner ring is extras like dancing. We hired like a professional dance troupe, and they were going to wear these very flowy gypsy garbs, and they were going to dance in a circle around the bonfire. Again, it goes bonfire, dancers with flowy garments, and outer ring of flaming tiki torches. So it's just like, well, let's
not dangerous at all.
Yeah. And I'm the producer. I'm going, I don't know if our contingency insurance is going to cover lighting extras on fire. This is not going to end well. So I just was, I think I was just praying the whole time. I'm just like, please don't let people get lit on fire. This is not going to be very good for the movie at all.
Right.
We don't want to light the extras.
You only want to do that on purpose.
Yeah, don't light the fire. Don't light the gypsy dancers on fire. Nobody caught on fire, but that was probably the most nerve-wracking moment of my entire brief independent producer/director career.
Scary.
Don't light the extras on fire. It's not good for publicity.
It's one of those. Did you have that moment where you're sort of like looking at it and you're going, "Oh, it's really windy. There's lots of fire."
Yeah, I had a lot of moments like that. All I was doing, if you can have like, a 45-minute heart attack, that's what was happening.
Wow. Okay. All right. So let's do poker face sledgehammer.
Okay. So back in nursing, this was really funny, is that I was very expressive and a creative person. And at one point, I think I was in the sophomore nursing clinical, and my instructor pulled me aside, and she's a very serious nursing person. This is the other reason I didn't get along with nurses very well. And I didn't fit in very well because I'm not a very serious person, as you can probably tell. And she pulled me aside and she said, "Christine, you have to work on your poker face. You're too expressive and you're scaring the patients." Oh, Jesus. So you can see.
I've had this advice before. Yes.
Yeah. Your listeners can't see, but you've seen the expressions like for this entire interview. This is just how I am. And I've been this way since birth. So she said, "You need to develop a poker face." So I worked very hard to develop my poker face and be a serious nurse that didn't scare the crap out of the patients. And
it's probably a good skill for a nurse.
Well, I apparently did a very good job at this, too good of a job, because I got into acting school a few years later. And my acting teacher pulled me aside and he said, "Christine, I have just one bit of advice for you," because we were doing like improv in the moment and you're emotionally reacting to your scene partner and you're just in the flow and the emotions and the things.
Yeah.
And I was standing there just like, there's an exercise from Stanislavski and Meisner. These were like the kings of, acting from way back in the day, where you say something and your partner reacts to just anything you're giving them. So it's just like, you have a blue shirt on. I have a blue shirt on, and you have to like, kind of just react and maybe add some emotion to it. But everything they were giving me, I'd just be like, "I have a blue shirt on. it is sunny out. I mean, I was like an android. I took the nursing instructor's advice so well. So my acting teacher pulls me aside, and this is so funny because tell me this isn't like a complete like circular story. He says, I just have one bit of advice for you. He said, Christine, you got to take a sledgehammer to that poker face.
Oh, that's the best.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So the poker face is not helping you now.
No. So I took a sledgehammer to it and now I'm like this.
Well, that's good. The sledgehammer worked.
Yeah. But I took the nursing instructor's advice very well.
Maybe a little too well.
Yeah. And he actually said, a lot of my students, he said, when I'm having this conversation with them, I'm telling them, you have to take a pickaxe to it. No, Christine, you need a sledgehammer. Yeah. There's poker face sledgehammer. Yes.
It seems like you take advice to the extreme sometimes.
Yeah. It's that whole like little perfectionist CEO. High school.
Right.
It's still there.
It circles back to I'm in charge here. Okay.
I'm in charge. I should be a very serious person.
Are you where you're supposed to be right now? Oh, sorry. You're a teacher.
I'm not supposed to be anywhere. I'm an abstract entity in this high school.
So I'm a big fan of The Big Lebowski, and I know the dude abides. So
yes.
I didn't know there was a real life inspiration of the dude.
There is. Okay. And his name is Jeff Dowd, and he is a character. Does he
hang out in bowling alleys
No, he hangs out at indie film festivals because he's a film promoter, and he's the one that goes around and goes to the festivals and plucks out like the future Blair Witch projects and says this is going to be a hit and makes sure that they get to movie theaters. Oh, wow. So he's actually a very big deal. And at first when you meet him, you'd be like, all right, this is not, the dude.
He's in a bathrobe.
He's not in the bathrobe in Ralph's, drinking half and half. That's not who this guy is.
Oh, damn it.
But when you spend, a little bit of time with Jeff, you instantly realize why the Coen brothers and all their genius, you're just like, oh, I totally see the connection now. Jeff Dowd is by far the best natural human storyteller I have ever met in my entire life. He's one of these guys where he like holds court. Well, he did back in the day. This is like late 90s when I lived in LA. So you'd go to like a movie screening, and afterwards he just holds court and he just is telling these stories and stories and stories. Each one is crazier. And you just sit there and you're just totally he's just an amazing storyteller. And then you realize like, how long have I been sitting on this ottoman? I think it's been like 3 hours. Like he just is like the best storyteller.
You're just transfixed. You're taken away. Yeah.
And so he just has all these like adventures. So we just kind of like, hung out at like music things, and he just always introduced me to crazy. He just knew like the crazy things where it's like, there's like this office building I meet there. I want to introduce you to these like famous musicians. I can't think of their names. They're like the 1970s rock and roll guys that had they look like albinos. They had the long blonde hair.
Wow.
The twins, those guys, not Nelson from the 80s, but the 70s rockers. Anyway, he kept introducing me to people, and Belushi was there that night. I like hanging out with the dude. It is like a hallucination, even though you're not on hallucinogenics, because he just lives in this alternate reality. And that's when I think of like, that's where the Coen brothers were inspired to create, Jeff Lebowski based on Jeff Dowd. Is that Jeff Dowd, like he does live in like, it's just like, you're just meeting people and he's saying things in these conversations and you're like, I don't know where I am or what's happening right now. And I thought this was an office building, but there's a secret underground club and there's Belushi on stage and I have no idea what's happening in my life right now. And that is like, that's the element of the dude. But I learned so much about storytelling, just like watching him just hold court for hours, just telling these stories and everybody just sitting there with their jaws dropped. Just like, oh my God.
That's amazing.
Yeah, the real life dude.
The real life dude has his own reality altering field.
You hang out with him and you don't know where you are. And you're not, I'm serious. So you don't need to be on any mind altering substances. You just kind of lose track of reality and hang out with him.
It's his vibe field.
Yeah. It is. So that's the dude story. There is a real life dude. I thought everybody knew there was a real life dude.
I did not know. No. Real life dude. You know that the some lines from The Big Lebowski have leaked into advertising?
Oh yeah, I've seen the carried it all over, but I don't think any of that.
So there's
the essence.
There's a commercial for Rugs USA.
Oh yeah. Oh my God, the rug. Yeah.
Yeah. And the
rug, man.
The lady literally says, "Man, that rug really pulls the room together."
That's awesome.
I know.
That is awesome.
And no, I don't know. If you're a fan of the show, you're going to pick it up. But right?
Yeah. Who's not a fan of, that movie is just.
It's
one of the best. One of my favorites.
Yeah, Coen brothers are the best.
Yeah.
So they just create like worlds. Like
They do.
I love, what is it? No Country for Old Men all the way up until, the guy that we've been following the whole show is summarily dead. And I'm like, okay, I'm quitting now.
Good storytelling.
It was.
So that was my hilarious Hollywood years, and those are just the 3 stories that I thought of.
Right. So okay, so let's talk about the genesis of you. So you write that first book, right? Yeah. As the Christina Inc. or Christine Inc. Yes.
Yes.
Sorry. So you write this first book, and then did it do well? Did it do bad? How did it go?
Oh, he was still working on it when I ended up, going just, more like kind of veers and everything like that. But ultimately the, career veers led me to just taking on more freelance clients like him. And eventually in 2003, my mom being, at this point, she's like a career consultant for me. She said,
Okay.
You have all these freelance clients, and don't forget, she's from the entrepreneur side of my family.
So she's looking.
So her
right.
inclination is, when you
Build a
start
business. Right.
I think most moms are, when are you going to get a job with a 401k and security?
Right.
My mom's thing is, you are just like your grandfather. Why don't you start a business? So she said, you have all these different freelance clients. She said, why don't you just become a company? She says, you're almost like your own corporation, Christine Inc. And she was talking about incorporated, and I changed the C to a K.
Aha. Ding.
Christine Inc.
So, okay.
So Christine Inc. was born in 2003. So I've been doing this for a living since
that's a long time.
But the company became a thing in 2003. Yeah.
Wow. So you've been at it for a long time.
A lot of words. So many.
Of words.
So many amazing stories that I've been to.
And you're up to how? So your podcast, talk about your podcast a little bit.
I have a daily podcast for authors. It's meant more to be an actionable tool than it is to be like a specific like talky podcast.
Right.
And it is called Your Daily Writing Habit, yourdailyWritingHabit.com, or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Right.
The average episode is about 3 to 5 minutes long, 7 days a week.
Wow.
That's why it's up to almost 1,100 episodes now. Because
it goes fast.
Yeah. And I have interview episodes maybe a few times a month, but the rest of them on average, again, it's meant to be a daily actionable writing tool to help you write and finish writing a great book. Because as we know, a lot of people writing books now. So, the key now is quality. Quality prevents invisibility. You need to have a book that stands out of the crowd. Well, a lot of marketers would disagree with me, but the number one thing that is going to help your book stand out is just supreme quality. So it's, you need a daily writing habit to make that happen. So a lot of my listeners, and I have listeners all over the world, which is so amazing. I get fan mail from authors in like Kenya and Nigeria saying, I'm writing a book now because of your show, which is such an honor.
That's amazing.
To say that. Yeah.
Congratulations.
So thank you. A lot of my listeners, they like to piggyback listening to my show. They use my show almost like an auditory cue, so that they schedule time to listen to my little 5-minute show. And then they schedule like an hour after to work on the book. They said, because we know that your episode in 5 minutes is going to get me so jazzed up about writing my book. I need to have that hour scheduled following, because I'm not going to be able to go back to my normal life. I'm going to have to go write my book. So they'll kind of, they'll schedule it. So they listen to my show and then they work on their book for an hour, and that becomes their daily writing habit.
Wow. Yeah. That's handy.
It is. Well, I've learned a lot coaching a lot of people and writing many, probably over 1 million words at this point, that it all comes down to the habit. So I am like a combination of, whatever your favorite writing instructor is, combined with James Clear, like Atomic Habits. So that's really, that's my entire brand, is helping authors finish writing great books, and habits are the key to doing that.
Right. It's actionable.
Yes.
It's we're going to do this. We're doing this. We're going to ship it.
Yes.
We're going to write it. We're going to edit it. We're going to finish it. And then we're going to ship it.
You can't read. Yeah. Reading and talking about writing is not going to get that book finished.
No. You actually have to write it, edit it, and ship it.
Sit down.
Yes.
Sit down, not even on the days you don't feel like it, especially because I found out from my whole other area of my life, I do circus things. I don't know if you saw, I have an aerial conditioning coach, and I hang upside down. I do Cirque du Soleil things. That's instead of going to the gym. I'm different. As you
good for you.
Yeah.
That sounds fun.
My aerial conditioning coach has taught me, he said, it's the days when you train that you absolutely are not feeling it, when you're fatigued, when it's not working. That's where you're going to make the most gains. Well, the same thing with a writing habit. It's those days where you absolutely, like, the last thing you want to do is work on your book. When you fight through those days, you're going to build some really solid writing habit muscles. So really fight through on those days. That's where you're going to get your biggest gains.
Jerry Seinfeld said exactly the same thing because he's got an aerial coach. No, I'm just kidding.
Does he play circus too?
Yes. No, he said the same thing, but he was talking about writing.
Yeah.
So he said, yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. He's really, that's his thing was, he was saying like, even on the days that I don't want to write,
especially on those days,
just do it anyway. You know, that's your job. That's your job.
And it is your job as an author. And when you're writing a book, by the way, you're an author. Okay. So there's a lot of people that don't, a lot of my clients too, they struggle with the identity of author. Even when they're writing the book, it's like, you're writing a book, you're an author. I know it's not published yet, but you're an author. You'll be a published author when the book is published, but you're an author now. You are authoring every day. Right.
So let's talk about how people can best get in touch with
so many ways.
Christine Inc. So there is the webpage, Christine-Inc., like the kind you write with, right?
Yeah.
With a K.com. Gotcha.
Yeah.
What else?
Anywhere on social media, just look for Christine Inc. And anywhere Google, you're going to find me. I'm pretty well branded.
Right.
And then, there's my podcast, Your Daily Writing Habit. But if you just kind of look up Christine Inc., I-N-K, you're going to track me down. Gotcha.
This has been a blast.
Yeah, I think so too. Thank you.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to say was like, you talked a lot about collaboration. Mm-hmm. So this whole podcast brand, that was a result of a collaboration of basically, you pay the guys and then you hang out on Zoom for, I don't know how many weeks. And they just ask me questions and we chit chat. Right. The only difference between the podcast and not a podcast was I didn't record it. I should have. But at one point I said, no. What I'm really kind of want to talk about is like, can we have like a midlife non-crisis? And they were like, oh, that's it.
A midlife non-crisis.
Yes. And they went away and came up with the show.
That's awesome.
Right. And then that became Vroom, Vroom, Veer. And I was like, Vroom, Vroom, Beer? No, I don't want to do Vroom, Vroom, Beer. And they're like, no, Vroom, Vroom, Veer.
You know what? I mean, I would say that circus is my midlife non-crisis because I didn't pick it up until, I'll just do the short version of this, until I was 44 and I was just overweight and out of shape, really the heaviest in my entire life. And I just had tried the gym. I tried the home workout tapes. I would do like exercise for 4 months, quit for 2 years, one of those people. And I realized, you probably guessed this about me, fun is a core value. And I realized like, exercise isn't working for me because it's not fun. And then I came across the circus arts, the aerial arts, like you see Cirque du Soleil.
Yeah.
I do the hoop that's on a rope hanging from the ceiling.
Oh my goodness.
And as soon as I discovered it, I said, I am never going to be bored doing this ever. And it's been 5 years now and I haven't been bored because there's always a new skill to train. There's always, I just did a performance. I was actually in a documentary film they filmed me for. The whole film crew came out a few weeks ago and they're putting me in a movie because of don't forget, we had this conversation started, severe scoliosis, rod in my back, age 44, I'm going to be an acrobat now. So the movie crew came out.
Talk about Veers.
Yeah, big time. So the movie crew came out a few weeks ago and half the day was interviewing me and the other half the day I did 2.5 hours of lyra of circus for them, which there was no skin left on the back of my knees by the time we were done.
Yikes. Well, good for you.
Yeah, so that was my, because you said you're midlife
non-crisis.
Midlife non-crisis.
Yeah.
Circus is my midlife non-crisis because it's not a crisis. It's just, it's changed the entire course of my life.
Totally.
In such a joyful way. Yeah.
Right. Wow. Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah. I mean, just when I say circus, I'm just like,
circus. I can tell you're beaming with joy.
Yes. Well, when people go to the gym, do they go treadmill? Woo?
Treadmill? No. Kettlebell.
I go to the gym and I do go to the gym, to sustain the circus, and nobody looks happy there. You go to a circus studio, everybody's like singing along to Disney songs, and then you go to the gym and it's like, Big Brother here.
Yes.
Nobody's happy at the gym.
Yeah, that's a whole nother show. That'll be show number 2.
I'm happy to come back and I'll come on as many times as you want.
That'd be great. All right. Hey, Christine Inc., this has been a blast, a.k.a. Christine Whitmarsh, not Whitmore. Okay. You have a good one, and thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Don't hang up.
I won't hang up.
But I will stop the recording. All right.
Thanks for taking the time to ride along with us on another episode of Vroom Vroom Veer. For podcast info and show notes, be sure to head over to vvveer.com. That's VVER.com. Man, that's fun to say. And we'll catch up with you next time here on Vroom Vroom Veer.